Amara, remember who you are. Campus life will test your values. Mommy, relax now, I'll be fine. I'm not a child again.
That morning at the airport, I thought I was just leaving home for school. I didn't know I was walking into a test, not of my intelligence, not of my strength, but of who I really was when no one was watching.
My name is Amara, and this is the story of the line I refused to cross. I was 20 years old that morning when I left for university. I had absolutely no idea what the promise I made to my mom was going to cost me to keep. That is always how it goes, isn't it? We leave home with clean hands and the very best intentions. We don't know yet that the education that will matter most, the one that shapes every version of us that comes after, doesn't happen in any lecture hall. I arrived on campus on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I understood I had walked into a different world entirely.
My roommate's name was Kemi. She was loud, not recklessly, but deliberately, the way certain people are loud when they have decided that silence is a luxury they cannot afford. She wore confidence the way some people wear borrowed clothes, beautifully, convincingly, with the low-level awareness that it didn't quite belong to her yet. I liked her immediately. That first night, I knelt beside my bed to pray. It wasn't his show. It was what I had always done. It kept me tethered to something real when everything else felt uncertain. I heard the eye roll in her voice before she even finished the question. She asked if I actually did that every night. I told her it kept me grounded. She gave a little smirk and said she'd see how long it lasted here. I know now that she wasn't being cruel. She was being honest about what she had already watched happen to other girls on this campus. She had seen enough stories to know how they tend to end. What she didn't know yet was that mine was going to end differently. That night, after I was already asleep, her phone lit up with a message from a boy called TJ. It said, "Bring the new girl to the party." She stared at it for a long time in the dark. Then she looked at my sleeping face, peaceful, unbothered, still wearing its innocence like armor. And she typed back, already on it. She told me this much later, after everything. She said she was sorry. I believed her because by then I had seen exactly what sorry costs a person when they truly mean it. His name was TJ, final year, smooth, the kind of charming that has been practiced long enough to feel natural. He found me in the cafeteria on a Wednesday, not by accident. TJ did very little by accident. He leaned across the table with the ease of a man who had never been told no and was not expecting it now. He called me Saint Amara, said he liked a challenge. I just mind my business, I said it, and I walked away. I thought that was the end of it. I was so young. That same afternoon, I found a note in my bag. No name, just 8 words on a torn piece of paper. You can't hide forever. Everyone breaks someday. I want you to understand something about that note. It wasn't a threat, not exactly. It was a seed. It was designed to make me believe that falling was inevitable, that every girl who walks onto this campus eventually becomes a smaller version of herself. And the only question is how long it takes. When someone tells you that everyone breaks, they are not reporting a fact. They are planting something inside you. The question is whether you will take. They invited me to a study group. Kemi mentioned it casually. TJ was organizing it. Several people from my faculty were going. It would help with the continuous assessment. Just a study session. Of course.
I hesitated. I was new and behind on 2 assignments, and I told myself I could walk into any room and remain myself. That was the other lie I was being told, this time by my own pride. The room was dimly lit, no textbooks visible, music playing too low to be ambient and too deliberate to be ignored. Drinks already poured. TJ stood at the center of it all, with the smile of a man watching his actor arrive exactly on cue. He said I had made it, that he knew I would. I told him I came to read. He told me we'll read later, just relax, and he held out a drink. I want to be honest with you because this story is only worth anything if I am. I felt it, the pull, the desire to just be normal, to be a regular girl at a regular gathering where nobody wants to be the odd one out. I felt the weight of every stare in that room, and I understood, with a horrible, humbling clarity, how loneliness can be used as a lever. Then a girl on the other side of the room laughed, wild, too bright, the laugh of someone not entirely in control of her own face, and something in me went very still. I asked what was in the drinks. Kemi told me to chill. I set my cup down on the nearest surface. The sound of it landing, barely audible over the music, was somehow the loudest thing in the room. Every pale vice turned to me. TJ's face changed. The charm dissolved. Underneath it was something cold and entitled and very old. He asked if I thought I was better than them. I didn't answer. I walked out. Sometimes the bravest thing you will ever do happens in a room when nobody is watching, when no one will applaud you, where the only witnesses are yourself and God. I walked out of that room and I kept walking. I thought walking out was the end of it. I was wrong.
The next morning, there was a video. Someone had recorded me through my window the night before, kneeling beside my bed, praying. Private, sacred, mine. It was posted publicly, with a caption designed to make it look like a performance, and the campus shared it. I walked through the hallway the next morning and heard myself being passed between other people's mouths like currency. Students joked that I should pray for better Wi-Fi. They called me the girl who thought she was holier than everyone. In class, my lecturer, Mr. Azak, stopped me after the session. He told me very calmly to be careful who he crossed on this campus. He said TJ was a senior. He said it in a way that was both a warning and a threat. Lydia, Kemi's friend, a girl with tired eyes and a laugh that always came a beat too fast, found me afterward and whispered that they were planning something. She said the next test wouldn't be written on paper. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from being mocked for something sacred. It does not feel noble in the moment. It feels humiliating. It makes you want to hide the very thing that makes you who you are, just to make the noise stop. That night, I knelt again. Not because I felt strong, but because I had nothing else left to hold on to. Then came the email. It was anonymous, specific, and threatening in the language of bureaucracy, the kind of threat that wears a suit and speaks in policies. It said my academic performance was under review. My assignment had been flagged. If I wanted to protect my grade, my scholarship, and my parents' sacrifice, I should come to a private meeting. I went because I was 20 years old and I was scared, and fear makes us do things that bravery in a calmer moment might not. I sat across from Mr. Razak in his office. I watched him lean forward across his desk with the practiced ease of a man who has done this before, many times, to many girls. He told me he could fix everything, the flags, the review, the grade, if I was willing to make it worth his while. He cut me off before I could respond and said I should think carefully, that one yes could change my entire future. I looked at the door. It was locked. In that silence, in that terrible space between his offer and my answer, I did not think about my grades or my scholarship. I thought about my mother's arms at the airport. I thought about a woman who had spent 20 years pouring everything she had into me, not knowing which moment it was being saved for. And I knew this was the moment. I told him I came here to learn, not to sell my soul, not for any grade, not for anything he had to offer. He said I would fail,
I told him I would feel with everything intact. I walked to the door. It opened. It had always been unlocked. The lock was never in the door. It was in me, and I had just refused to turn it. I walked into the corridor and kept walking. I did not cry until I was outside, alone, where nobody could see. There is a line. You may not see it clearly until you are standing right at the edge of it, but you will feel it. It will say, not this, not me, not today. Listen to that voice. It knows everything. 3 weeks later, Lydia collapsed at another party. The rumor said overdose. The news spread quickly, carelessly, like entertainment. Nobody stopped to ask what it meant that a 19-year-old girl was in a hospital bed, trying to belong to something that was destroying her. I went to the hospital alone. We weren't close, but I went because something in me recognized that Lydia was a girl who had never been gone to. I sat beside her bed, held her hand, and waited. When she opened her eyes, she said she should have listened. She said she just wanted to belong, to be seen, to matter. I told her she does matter, right now, exactly as she is, and that she is not too far gone, that nobody is too far gone. She turned her face away at first, but then her shoulders softened, and she cried quietly, the way people cry when they have been holding something for far too long.
We all want to belong. I need you to hear me say that without any shame attached to it. That desire is not weakness. It is not foolishness. It is one of the most human things we carry. This ache to be seen, to be chosen, to have a place where people know your name and mean it warmly. The tragedy is not the wanting. The tragedy is what we sometimes destroy in ourselves trying to earn it. By the time Lydia was discharged, she had made a decision that took more courage than any of her earlier survival had required. She had been keeping receipts, quietly and carefully, screenshots, voice notes, a record of everything she had witnessed from inside TJ's world. The parties, the lecturers on payroll, the girls who had been targeted and discarded, the grade bought and sold. She brought it all to me at 2 a.m. The 3 of us, Lydia, Kemi, and I, sat on the floor of my room with a laptop between us while the campus slept. Lydia told me she hadn't reported it before because she was part of it, not an outside witness but an inside one. She said no one was going to believe her. I told her she was part of ending it now, and that counted for everything. Then Kemi, my roommate, who had rolled her eyes at my prayers on that very first night, looked at us and told us something that changed the whole shape of the night. She said they were filing a formal complaint against me in the morning, fabricated evidence, fake assignment submissions with my name, time-stamped before my real ones. By the time I tried to submit Lydia's evidence, they would frame it as a desperate student trying to cover her own misconduct. I asked how she knew all of this. She said they had asked her to help them, and she had said yes so she could warn me in person where there were no cameras. I looked at her, this loud, borrowed confidence girl who had once smirked at my prayers, and I saw in her face the look of someone who had finally decided which side of a line she wanted to stand on. I said we would not wait until morning. It was 11:47 that night when I sent the email. I compiled everything, Lydia's screenshots, my own audio from outside Razak's office, Lydia's written testimony, and my original time-stamped assignment. I sent it to the Student Welfare Board, the Ethics Committee, and a journalist student named Fonke I had met at orientation, who had once told me she was working on something. The cursor hovered. Kemi said there was no going back. I told her there had never been any going back for me. Then I pressed send. The email was gone, traveling invisible and irreversible through fiber and light toward the people who had the power to act. Some decisions are not made in a single moment of courage. They are made slowly, painfully, across weeks of being afraid, of holding on by your fingernails, of praying in the dark when you have nothing left to offer God except the act of showing up and saying you cannot carry it alone anymore. And then one night at 11:47, you press send and you find out exactly what you are made of. The ethics board hearing room had the atmosphere of all rooms where consequences are dispensed, fluorescent light with no shadows and no mercy, and a long table of people trained to show nothing on their faces. Mr. Razak sat across me in his best suit, composed and entitled, with the posture of a man who had survived 14 years by believing he was untouchable. I sat across him in a dress I had ironed that morning, alone except for the weight of everything I had decided to be. He spoke first, smooth and measured. He said I was a student retaliating after he had flagged my work. He said I was a young girl with an agenda. Then the chair said she would hear from Miss Amara. I stood. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. Inside my chest, my heart was doing something entirely its own. But I had learnt, through every hard thing since the day I arrived on this campus, that steadiness is not the absence of trembling. It is the decision to speak clearly despite it.
I said I had audio recordings. I said I had documented evidence of coordinated grade manipulation. I said I had a fellow student, a direct witness and victim, willing to testify. I said I had timestamps proving my evidence was compiled before any complaint was filed against me. I said I did not come there to fight a man. I came to protect every girl who walks into that office afraid and alone, without anyone telling her she has another choice. I placed the USB drive on the table. The room was quiet for a long time. I watched Razak's composure begin to fracture, barely, like a fine crack in expensive porcelain. But the board saw it. Everyone saw it. The chair announced that he was suspended from all teaching duties pending a full investigation, effective immediately. He stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. He looked at me with everything the charm had been built to hide and said I would regret it. I told him I already didn't. Kemi was waiting outside. When she saw my face, she ran to me and held me the way people do when words are not enough and they need something solid to confirm that something real has happened. She asked how I had been so calm in there because she had been shaking just from waiting outside. I started laughing because I couldn't help it. I told her I was shaking too, completely, the entire time. But something steadied me. Something always does. She pulled back and really looked at me. She asked if it was my God thing. I told her it was my God, my values, and the voice my mother poured into me before I ever stepped out on that campus. I said I had nothing in that room except who I am, and it was enough. It was more than enough. That evening, I knelt in my room for the last time that semester. The pampas light stretched out below my window like a small civilization, full of its own quiet urgencies. I had lived among them, not apart from them, and I had not lost myself in the process. I prayed and thanked God for not removing the fire, but for making sure I did not burn. I thanked him for not letting me forget who I was, even when everything around me tried to make me forget. My mother called. Her face appeared on the screen, older, familiar, the first home I had ever known. She said she had heard everything. She said she was proud of me. And then she stopped because she was crying, and my mother does not cry easily, and the sound of it broke something open in me. I told her she had always said my values were not a cage. She had said they were armor. She asked me softly if the armor had held. Every single piece, I replied.
In the weeks that followed, things moved. TJ was suspended. Funke published the story, first in the campus journal, then in a national student publication, and the ripple reached places none of us expected. 3 other students came forward. The university opened a full review of grading practices in the faculty. Mr. Razak did not return. Lydia recovered slowly. I came to that campus a girl with promises. I left that chapter a woman who had kept them. Not because I was the strongest, or the most fearless, or the most prepared, but because I was never standing alone, even in every moment that felt like I was, even at 11:47, even in a locked office, even in the dark, with my knees on the floor and nothing left to give except the act of showing up. I was never alone. I want to say something to you before I go, not as a story, but as a word from me directly to you. We all want to belong. I know you do. I did. Every person who has ever lived has carried that ache, the need to be seen, to be chosen, to have a place where people know your name and are glad you came. That desire is not your weakness, it is your humanity. But real belonging begins the moment you refuse to lose yourself just to be accepted. It is not found when you finally perform the right version of yourself for the right audience. It is found when you stand in a room, shaking on the inside, and speak with the voice your mother gave you, your God gave you, your deepest self gave you, and refuse to trade it for comfort. Conviction will be tested, not loudly, not with a villain wearing a sign, but in a dim room with a cup in your hand and a voice inside you saying quietly, firmly, not this. Courage will be required, not the sweeping cinematic kind, but the quiet kind, the 11:47 kind, the pressing send when your hands won't stop trembling kind. And at some point, you will have to stand when it feels like no one else is standing with you. The room will be quiet, the faces will be watching,
and the only things you will have are your evidence, your values, and the God who did not remove the fire, but made sure you did not burn. When your strength runs out, God's presence will not. There is a line. You will know it when you reach it. You will feel it in the truest room of yourself, and by God's grace, may you never cross it.